articles. The first one came out of FAIR earlier in the week, which is the projected collapse of crucial Antarctic current met with media silence, which, okay, I hadn't heard anything about a crucial Antarctic current. That's kind of scary. So this is a short little thing talking about that on March 20th, the IPCC report came out and everyone kind of, said that that was really bad. But then on March 29th in Nature, this study found that a little studied deep ocean circulation system is slowing dramatically and could collapse this century. One IPCC author not involved in the study declared it headline news. And unfortunately, of course, thanks to Don't Look Up or whatever, and science doesn't guide U.S. corporate media, which were virtually silent on the landmark study. Authors modeled
science.
Yeah, they modeled the effects of Antarctic meltwater on deep ocean currents crucial to marine ecosystems. So it's a little into it here, but similar to the more well-studied Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, right? But that's what the Gulf Stream is part of, right? That's important, which is known to be dangerously weakening. So the Antarctic overturning circulation has major planetary impacts. It pushes nutrient-dense water from the ocean floor up toward the surface, which where those nutrients support marine life, right? So the Nature study, which also refers to the current as Antarctic bottom water, found that this circulation system is projected to slow down 42% by 2050. That's not very far off. And
have we watched a Day After Tomorrow? Did people watch them run away from the ice in that movie?
Well,
is that?
And I remember, like, from An Inconvenient Truth, like 20 years ago, they talked about, and that's a little penguin sitting there, the crucial Antarctic, that's the article that came out on CNN on March 29th, was the only major U.S. outlet that they could find covering the news that an ocean current would collapse in this century, which would mean that one of the spigots that keeps the currents going would collapse, and that could end up in a planetary freeze potentially. So this is indeed headline news, with major impacts on the sustainability of marine ecosystems and the ocean's capacity to absorb carbon dioxide, accelerating climate change. And this deep warming could further ice melt, which isn't incorporated into the studies modeled, meaning that this could happen
then make all your currents
even faster,
worse.
Right? And it could happen even faster than the model predicts. So yet, FAIR could find no record of
you're
course.
changing density. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You're adding a ton more fresh water, which then that fresh water doesn't sink as well as salt water and doesn't get as cold. So therefore, you screw up pretty much every current that controls our climate. So,
just a few mentions.
We're going to have a good time.
Look at that. 3 a.m. CNN newsroom, April 1st. The conversation picked up by
Chicago's going to get a lot colder.
Everybody's going to get a lot colder. But basically, it's been ignored. Reuters, the London Guardian, and BBC published articles. Bill McKibben argued that Trump's arrest, which dominated headlines, of course, the day the Nature study came out, far less remarkable. Him ending up in trouble for tax evasion to cover up an affair with a porn star, right, seems unlikely.
God.
This whole thing with Stormy Daniels and Trump, it's a distraction. And the thing is, what I find funny is that there was an article that came out where Stormy Daniels felt sorry for Trump. You know what? People don't, if people want to really look back in regards to how those two hooked up, I know, disgusting image in everyone's head. But Stormy was trying to get on the Celebrity Apprentice.
Yep.
She was trying to do that to get on that show. Gee, Stormy, look, I mean, she knew what she was doing when she hooked up with Trump. Okay. Trump was already married at the time, and she could have easily said, no, I'm not that desperate to get on Celebrity Apprentice. Hell, I don't even know why she even really got in there in the first place, but there you go. I mean, it is what it is. You had two consenting adults, and Trump, being the crazy jagoff that he is, of course, gives her $130K in hush money. And again, what's also interesting is that when Stormy Daniels hired her first lawyer, I mean, this guy had a history of swindling not only her, but other of his own clients. I mean, I remember when Vote Blue, no matter who, was hyping her original lawyer up as the guy that could face off against Trump. This is our hero. I mean, talk about a goddamn distraction.
Right?
Yep.
Well, FAIR was tough. Oh, God. Bear was talking about how when the first study came out last year, 6 weeks later, as of Earth Day, there was basically no coverage of it between when it first came out and then Earth Day. And look, fossil fuel industry, the major news advertisers they have on politics. So they're not covering, in any case, the shocking lack of coverage is once again corporate media's commitment to a livable planet comes nowhere close to matching the urgency of the situation. But this is actually making sense of the report. What actually is in this damn thing? And again, this is out of our friends over at the Indie Media Awards. Common Dreams. Thank you.
There you go.
All right. And this is like a super long one that was written by this guy, Kim Scipes, and he's a professor, really knows his stuff. It's in detail. It's very in depth. But the news is not good. Basically, their arguments have gotten more refined, more specific. Climate change impacting humans, animals, and plants to a greater and greater extent. Things are getting worse, and its impact will escalate the longer we hesitate to take resolute steps to address it. Nobody surprised about any of that. But here's where it's making several points. The Earth's temperature is rising. With each increased increment, things are getting worse. Moving forward, without major changes this decade, they will get exponentially worse. We're literally like out of time. And
yep.
Right.
Well, there isn't a chance for humanity to really go back in time and reverse these damages. I mean, the damage is already done. We're just going to have to live in a world where the planet will be reacting to us violently. This is our situation as a species and as a people that we will have to overcome. And with the threat of superstorms and droughts and cold winters, polar vortexes, etc., we're going to have to come to the terms of the fact that our infrastructure, especially here in America, is not up to the standard to really deal with the amount of changes that will be impacting our environment. So
we can't even deal with what we have right now, let alone what's coming forward.
Not only can we not deal with it, but it will impact how we consume our food, how we live, how we contribute to our society. It's these everlasting changes. And the thing is, as sea levels continue to rise, there might one day be a situation to where a superstorm hits Miami once, twice, 3 times. And
that's just the easy stuff that could happen, let alone like dinosaurs unmelt from the ice, or
I'm not worried about that.
I don't think you have to worry about those corpses.
Jurassic Park, okay.
Yeah,
we're not going Jurassic Park.
I'm serious.
I like
they have been pulling Jurassic viruses out of the snow and giving them little virus CPR, waking them back up. I'm telling you.
I like those 1950s stories, but I don't think there's going to be no giant praying mantis or dinosaur waking up from the ice.
That is my nightmare, a giant praying mantis. Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. That's terrifying.
Yeah. There was actually a movie called The Deadly Mantis, 1956. It came out. So yeah. And what I found funny about that film is the main protagonist is telling, I think some bunch of scientists saying, well, what if they were alive? Those animals that were frozen in that block of ice, what if they are still alive? It's like, dude, no, they're dead. They're dead.
Yeah.
They're dead.
Yeah. I can picture Mystery Science Theater in front of them.
So this guy says in the report, they present findings from a wide range of research, recognizing a range of possibilities. They give median or mid-range possibilities, but we're going to only talk about the 90% of the finding, the range of 90% or higher. Reporting median findings is the best way to find, to represent a range of New America results, much more representative than averages. So that's what they're doing here. But the current status and trends were that what this says, should it not be clear, is that human beings have caused the Earth's surface of temperature to rise, not natural processes, through emitting greenhouse gases, which include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases, with the first 2 being the most harmful, of course. And we know from the extent of this increase compared to the median temperature from between 1850 and 1900, median temperature between 2011 and 2020 was 1.1 degrees Celsius higher in just 9 years. The entire 50-year stretch 1850 to 1900 was chosen to represent pre-industrial civilization. So before we actually started polluting like crazy with our equipment and machinery. This gives us a more stable period of comparison, median temperature across a 50-year period, instead of just the usual single years of 1750 or 1880, when 1750 is when the Industrial Revolution began, or 1880 when detailed records began being compiled. Thus, we can be more confident of reported increases and decreases in the future. But it's accelerating at such a crazy pace. Accordingly, we know that 58% of the approximate 2,400 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalents emitted by humans into the atmosphere, or 2.2 trillion pounds, were emitted between 1850 and 1989, while the other 42% have happened between 1990 and 2019. That's like since I've been in high school. That's insane. 42% of the carbon emitted in the world history, or since 1850. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we're polluters and we're users and we're destroying this planet. Okay, shows the annual rates increasing faster in the second period than in the initial period. So it keeps going and keeps showcasing how much quicker we're accelerating. All right, CO2 level was already 420 parts per million, and it gets very technical. I don't want to go into how technical this is, but it's important that as carbon dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere, the more it attacks the very atmosphere that protects the Earth from the sun's rays. Again, that's like the ozone layer. Put in the essential relationship to more greenhouse gases released, the more damage to the atmosphere, leading to more warming and many related problems. Okay, so this is an inconvenient truth, literally coming true. Sea level's been rising around the globe. The rate of increase been accelerating. And again, between 1901 and 70, 1.3 millimeters, 1971 and 2006, 1.9 millimeters, and between 2006 and 2018, 3.7 millimeters per year, double the rise, the rate of rise. So what, right? Well, when you consider, again, the large number of cities that are on the coasts of oceans, and it lists a ton of them, including Amsterdam and Tokyo and Glasgow and London and New Orleans and Mobile and all of our shipping cities, New York City, Philly, Newport News, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle, LA. You're talking hundreds of millions of people who are increasing risk from sea level rise. All right. And then when we recognize that most coastal cities have major infrastructures, sanitation, transportation, electricity, below street level, you can see that rising oceans threaten the well-being of people before rising to street level. It can electrocute like a whole group of people very easily.
I mean, you've already seen subways completely flooded.
Or
like
just
recently.
flood out the system so that they're completely unusable. Right. So,
well, the thing is, like, if we look at what happened to New York City, I think there were two different occasions where the subways were flooded out, in which, again, the trains were delayed. You know, there's going to be a lot of major metropolitan cities that are on the East Coast that will deal with an absolute and irreversible change to how they maintain their entire infrastructure. New York City, let's face it, it's a huge economic hub for the American Republic. And when we look at the fact that, again, nothing's been updated in regards to how we build our city and how it's supposed to, our cities, or how we're supposed to update for changes in the weather. I mean, with so many stories that we've covered, all of us have covered, with buildings and trains being derailed and so much more, there's going to come to a point to where all of our antiquated systems will be irrelevant, and we'll be unable to truly use them unless the United States is deciding to invest into itself. I mean, there might, like I mentioned, like these superstorms hitting Florida, for example. Can you imagine a day when one day Miami or Orlando are one day deemed, hey, we can't rebuild these cities because it just costs too much, and the sea is going to claim it anyways. I mean, there's going to be a mass exodus of people leaving these low sea level areas and going to higher ground so that they could restart their lives. I mean, there's all this concern about migrants crossing the border, but what about here in our own country, where you're going to have millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of Americans leaving en masse? In mass to go to other states and restarting their lives. And with the way this economy is going and the lack of jobs, we are going to see so much instability it will make what we saw in the 1930s with the Depression seem like child's play. We have people in power that are not ready for the madness. And the fact is, the people in power right now are in their late 80s who will eventually die out because that's what's going to happen. But their successors waiting in wings have no idea or are truly incapable of offering any solutions to help the eventual climate migrants here in its own country. I mean, it's one thing to say there's going to be climate migrants from Central and South America, but climate migrants within our own country too. And not to mention, we've built community, moving away from the East Coast, but let's look at these cities and towns that are built in deserts or, dry climate areas.
Yep.
We built cities and towns in areas in which there's only a finite amount of fresh, clean drinking water.
Vegas, and Arizona, they're having it right now. Yeah.
And speaking of clean drinking water, we did not one but two documentary videos, Toxic Tour. There's Toxic Tour and Toxic Tour 2, where we were covering these industrial facilities dumping regulated toxic waste into Lake Michigan. And last I checked, Lake Michigan, along with Lake Superior, Lake Erie, Lake Huron, are all major bodies of fresh, clean drinking water.
Yeah.
And if they're contaminated, we can't use it. Then what does that say in the long run? Not to mention, there's lead in Flint, Michigan's water. There's all these chemicals in East Palestine, Ohio. There's lead in Chicago's drinking water. This is a powder keg that's ready to blow up.
Yep. So we're seeing again that we humans are killing the physical environment. I see what Patrick Bet David is saying, in that if insurers are still going and insuring beachfront property, then it can't be a problem. But those insurance companies are either going to go out of business or they're going to get bailed out.
They've also stopped doing that.
Right. And those guys
have
already
stopped doing that.
Right. And they're also not already doing flood insurance in Florida. But anyway, physical environment is not the only victim. Humans are, of course, especially susceptible to extreme heat events because human mortality and morbidity, very high confidence, is going to increase, right? The occurrence of climate-related foodborne and waterborne diseases, they have very high confidence that's going to increase. Water, all right? And the incidence of vector-borne diseases with high confidence are also going to increase. This is the result of like 90% certainty or more in assessed regions. Mental health challenges are associated with increasing temperatures, all right? The heat making people literally crazy. Trauma from extreme events because of that, and loss of livelihoods and culture because of the results of that. Climate and weather extremes are increasingly driving displacement in Africa, Asia, North America, Central and South America with medium confidence, and with small island states in the Caribbean and South Pacific being disproportionately affected relative to their small population and size. They literally could end up disappeared or underwater. Dominican Republic or Haiti. And this isn't, again, just isolated, right? So
resources.
Yeah, the IPCC report.
To keep you in line.
It is we're all going to die. They're going to destroy their entire we're already destroying the entire planet, and this is how it's going to happen. But they've been stunningly accurate or actually conservative in their reporting and in their estimation of how quickly things are accelerating, how quickly the ocean temperatures are increasing. I saw Desert Mantis talked about Superstorm Sandy, and I live in the New York area. I dealt with that, as well as Irene. Crab talked about that too. That assault during 2012 shows unequivocally that urban areas are at serious risk, and people of color and poor people of color. Look at all the people who lived in basement apartments that drowned when that place flooded out. It was disgusting. Oh, it was awful. And to sum up again, this is where it's going. So this guy said, how do we respond? So future risks, and what do we do with this, right? Number of choices, how do we respond? Now in reality, without broad widespread, the military is the key to me. Also, continued mobilization. Plastic, going to paper straws isn't going to do it if the military has these massive vehicles that are eating up the climate. So the report didn't say that. He did, that not to help out the people around the world, but to maintain their own wealth. About the wealthy, we have to wealth displays in 10% of households with the highest per capita emissions contribute 35 to 45% of global consumption-based household emissions. Bottom 50% contribute 13 to 15%. And that's, again, the wealthy getting wealthier, the poor staying poor, and the wealthy with the private jets and with their yachts and all the other toys that they have. NASCAR, I love not watching NASCAR, but NASCAR pollutes the air like crazy. You know, so all these toys are certainly not helping. And I argue that means we must unify with forces around the globe. No one people can make the required changes by themselves. Right. And this keeps
here's I don't mean to interject, but you know, I don't want to say it's too late, but we have to realize that the point of no return has already been crossed. And when it comes down to human civilizations rising and falling, we are kind of witnessing history repeat itself. Maybe, and I don't want to say like history repeat itself, but it sure does like to rhyme. And the thing is, you know, we become so over-reliant on fossil fuels and the energy it provides and how it is essential to everything that we do. With this collapse happening and with the fact that we got climate change and its overall role in our society, it is kind of inevitable at this point. And if I had to give a comparison, look at the Bronze Age collapse, in which, you know, you had societies over-reliant on bronze and on the complex trade system that they had. And as that those nations eventually, as that complex trade system began to fall apart, we also witnessed in that time a natural climate change event take place that caused a massive displacement of so many people. This is bound to happen. It's not. I don't want to say, hey, like, we got to do something right now. I mean, we should have done something years
ago, 20 years ago.
Now we have to clean up the milk that's been spilled.
It's now, yes, there's a cleanup. And unfortunately, there is going to be a crisis, a global crisis, in which we now have to face. We don't have a choice here, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and here's the
thing: there now, people.
If we choose this, then it is likely to happen, and it's up to us to decide if these ramifications are worthy and or desirable. But it's the politicians and the corporations that are effectively deciding this, and we're in deep crap because they've already effectively decided. Agenda 2030, World Economic Forum, all these major agendas that have been happening. How do we stop? How do we reverse any of this and put the brakes on all of it? Because this report spends considerable time discussing these models, but it doesn't do it in a systematic way that's easily accessible to non-physical students. Not going to spend a lot of time discussing them, right? But then this guy keeps going and going and going. It's crazy. You got to read this article because it really is important. That the science is incontrovertible. Climate change threatens the very existence of humans, animals, and most plants on the planet, although arguments can still be made about how soon we must resolutely act to actually have a chance of stopping this. Some people believe it's already too late. Others believe, like we said, by 2030. Others think we have more time. That's not settled. There is also hope that even if the Earth's surface temperature exceeds 1.5 degrees, future inventions could bring it back below and restore some kind of atmospheric stability, though I don't see any evidence to date that supports the development of something that effective. However, there are two things not mentioned in the report: war and capitalism. And I think you talked about, you're heavily anti-war, Kit. We certainly are also, as well as anti-capitalist.
Unfortunately, when it comes down to humans, I do hope for the day when we evolve out of our primal instincts, but warfare, greed, the need to compete is ingrained into our psyche, into our mindset as a species. And the only way I fear we're going to learn the final lesson is if there is an absolute fallout. And the thing is, I don't want us to get to that point, because if we do cross that line further, then that means there's going to be some jagoff who's going to look at the shiny red button, push it, nukes go flying, and mushroom clouds are in the sky. And then there's no rebuilding after this.
Like Sleepy Joe.
There is no great reconstruction, because once that happens, all this technology you see before you, the Library of Alexandria at your fingertips. That's what I call our cell phones. That's not coming back. That will not come back. And the state of humanity, the survivors will envy the dead if there will be any survivors, because the planet will again be permanently damaged by our own man-made weapons of mass destruction.
And he's talking about, look, every bridge or building struck harms the environment, period, in war. And look at what's happening. You got Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, Yemen, which is thankfully ended, and us versus the world. So, you know, on top of the fact that we're unleashing Agent Orange, and then Nord Stream, which we destroyed, allegedly. But
whoa, guys, stop you right there.
Right.
New York Times posted an article saying, wait a minute, maybe it's in the American people's best interest not to look further.
No, not to look anymore. No, we don't want to look any further into that.
Fake news.
That's right.
Don't look any further.
Right.
Stop asking questions. Yes, that's a human ear. That's one of my favorite lines from Blue Velvet.
Capitalism's
that's
demand.
a human ear.
Capitalism's immediate demand for increased production is killing us through the emission of greenhouse gases. We know simply it must be stopped as soon as possible. I don't think there's any support by anyone with any sense that capitalism will save us, that it'll create the tools to remove carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, fluorinated gases quickly enough or sufficiently enough to keep the Earth's temperature at or below 1.5 degrees rise. So we're fucked, as Misty likes to say all the time.
We're fucked.
Yep.
So
We're fucked.
Yes, thank you, Reef. Neither war nor capitalism were mentioned in this report by the IPCC. Something obviously is missing, for sure, right? But we need to include many more things into the mix. But yeah, we're already screwed. And